Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today, all the way from San Francisco in the USA, Carlos Diaz, who's the founder of Uncut FM, which is the first NFT, non-fungible tokens, for those that don't know what that is, marketplace for content creators, where hosts of podcasts and their communities can gather to create, to collect, to share, and trade unique collectibles and benefits around their favorite content. So I'm really looking forward to exploring that some more. And as a complete transparency, I am a client of Uncut FM. So you'll be seeing in the InnovaBuzz podcast some of that in action. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Carlos. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very pleased, to be here.
Now, Seth Silvers, he was our guest on episode 537 of the InnovaBuzz podcast. He introduced us. He got me interested in this whole idea of the digital tokens in the creator space. And he also suggested that we get you on the show to chat some more. So big hello to Seth.
Yeah, that's very kind from Seth. He's an amazing creator, by the way. He's doing a lot of podcasts himself. And yeah, he found us, very early when we were still in stealth mode. We didn't want anybody, to know about us. But Seth, found us, and since then we collaborated together. And I really like Seth, and I listened to the episode of your podcast, with him, and it was very, very interesting, fascinating.
Yeah, and his latest podcast, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but his latest podcast, which he's just launched, is chronicling his journey in using these digital tokens, using these NFTs.
Absolutely. It's called the Minted Podcast.
That's it, the Minted, yeah.
The Minted
so go
podcast,
check that
yes.
out.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, you've been a serial entrepreneur pretty much all your life at the leading edge of technology. So it's no surprise that you're in this new space or relatively new space using the NFTs and blockchain technology in podcasting. And I'm really keen to learn more about that. Before we dig into that, tell us a little bit about the impact you're making in the world today.
Wow. I hope I'm making an impact. But as you said, I've been an entrepreneur in the tech space, since 1996 when I created my first startup. I was 23 at this time, and I created this startup with we didn't call them startup, by the way, back then. But I created this startup with my brother, and he was only 18. So we were very early users of the internet. We were in France, back then. And I remember at this time, we were asking ourselves, what are we going to do in the internet space? The question was, are we going to provide access to the internet? Are we going to host website, or are we going to create website? The question seems crazy, today, but that was really the question we were asking ourselves, back then in 96. And we ended up creating what we call today a digital agency. And we started to educate, the market about the internet and what would be the impact, of the internet. And it went very well. This agency became one of the biggest independent digital agency in Europe, eventually became public in 2006. That's when I left, the company to create a new company that was on the Web 2 space. At this time in 96, it was the Web 1. It was just the beginning of the web. Then I created this second startup that was called, blueKiwi Software, and we were doing social collaboration. It was the beginning of the Web 2, where basically it was not only a large organization producing content, but anybody could create content themselves. And that was the beginning of the Web 2 that we know today. And a long story short, this company went very well as well. I moved to San Francisco in 2010. We sold the company in 2012. And then I created another company in San Francisco, and I failed. So I got a pretty good understanding of what it is, to be an entrepreneur. And if I look, and then I said, never again, I don't want to create startup anymore. And I became an investor, a pretty active business angel. I invested in more than 90 startups in the last 4 or 5 years. But then the COVID happened, and I had more time to think about, what was going on. And I could see, this wave and this new revolution of the Web3. And your question is about what is the impact? I think that the impact is across, all this story. I think that my role in this space has been always to anticipate revolutions that are not obvious and try to turn these crazy ideas into real business. And the main thing behind, this objective is to make people independent so they can really, embrace, the technology to do amazing stuff. So that was the case with the Web 1, give access to a maximum of information. With the Web 2 was about create yourself information and participate, in this information. With the Web3, I think it's about maybe fixing some of the problem we created with the Web2, maybe go back to the Web 1 and the roots, of the web, but also to make people more independent, from the centralized, platform that emerged, with the Web 2, and allow them to create a direct relationship, with others, and maybe control and reclaim ownership, on their content, their community, and the business that goes with it. So that's really my goal, right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm, that's wonderful.
I don't know if that answers, your question.
Yeah.
That's maybe a very long answer. That's a very French answer. Sorry about that. Okay. French people are always
of course.
talking too much.
As you said, your background is French. So, you touched on a couple of points there, and I know on the Uncut FM homepage, you say you're on a mission to create to build the new creators economy. Mm-hmm. And so tell us a little bit, what do you mean by that, the creators economy? You touched on a couple of points there in your last answer, but I'd really love to explore that some more.
Yeah, I like to always go back in the past, to look at all the journey and where we're coming from. But if you think about the web at the beginning, there were no creator economy because basically the creation was in the hands of a very small number of people able to produce, this content, because producing content on the web back in the 90s, even beginning of the 2000s, it was very expensive, so not everybody could create, and publish and distribute, content on the web. Then the Web 2 happened and the technology got commoditized and everybody could create this content, themselves. And that's the moment we started to see emerging, these, what we call the creation economy, where individuals started to become very powerful and able to create first amazing content with absolutely no big, production tools. There is people, right now, if you look at what's going on TikTok, for example, even on YouTube, creators doing content with only their phone and creating amazing content, or podcasters just with a microphone able to create amazing stories. That the creation economy, when we started to see individuals, independent, individuals creating very interesting content, very niche content also for very specific purposes, and start, monetizing, this content. The problem, with this creator economy and the Web 2 is that most of this monetization was happening on centralized, platform. So, for example, if you were a YouTuber, the only way for you to monetize your content on YouTube was and is still advertising. And it's an advertising that you do not control. So basically, you have your content out there, but you don't know which advertising is going to be on your content. And by the way, these centralized, platform are not giving you much, for this advertising. They're still, keeping a lot of the money, of these. But I think we reach a point, today where, and we see that every day, that we are consuming content from individuals and creators more than from traditional media companies. So we're watching much more, YouTube than TV. We are listening much more podcasts, than radio, for example, and stuff like that. So that's the creator economy. That's really this emerging trend that has been around, for a few years, where individuals are now the new media.
That's right.
And you're a perfect demonstration of that. That's exactly what we're doing here. And there is people listening to us. And we're doing that without, and that's a problem, maybe without any business model, And that shouldn't be the case, because these creators are very important for our everyday life. They are creating amazing content that we are listening every day, and they are struggling at monetizing, this content, not because their content is bad or because there is nobody listening to them, but because the business model that are offered, to them, today is not fair. It's just not fair. And I feel like most of the value of this content is today captured, by these platforms, decentralized, platform, and this has to change. So that's another impact, I really want to do, is that I want, creators to get, this money back, because it's they deserve, these value.
Well, certainly in the podcasting space, I know a lot of people I work with will start a podcast and will monetize that podcast. So we'll get advertising or we'll get sponsorship. They're kind of the two Web 2 models, I guess, that people have pursued in the past. And I always say, look, the amount of effort you have to put in to get advertising or sponsorship for the podcast versus the return you get is really not worth it. It's you've got to build up to millions of downloads, which will take several years at least of consistent podcasting and building an audience. And then you'll get fractions of cents per 1,000 downloads. And the measures of those downloads are quite controversial as well. So it's kind of really a huge effort for very little return.
Yes, and you're right. And there is another problem also, is that to get this attention, this number of listens or views, if you're a YouTuber, you need to compromise yourself. We know that you need to do a very specific kind of content. And that's a real problem. People will always be more interested in watching a plane crash than watching a TED Talk. We know that, that the nature, of people. That's why we have so much crap, out there, so much bad content. It's just because, and also because a platform, decentralized, platform, YouTube and the others, they want your full attention. They want a maximum of time, from you. So they don't care about the quality of the content, actually. What they care is the time you're spending, on their content, that what they think is their content. So basically, it's when I say you need to compromise yourself, is that you start making a kind of content that is going to please, the mass, the viewers, and also start, creating a format also that please the algorithm, of this platform, because they require also a very, when I see, for example, on YouTube, there is videos that explain to you what kind of format, what kind of duration of your videos you should have, to have the maximum of views. Yeah. That's terrible. That's a big threat, for a creation.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real problem. And you're right. That what you're describing, I've got my own podcast, myself. It's in French. It's named Silicon Carnet. And I'm doing 20,000 downloads per month. I'm not Joe Rogan, but it's not bad, for a French podcast. French is a small country. 20,000 downloads a month is not bad. And I got an advertising network that reached out to me and offered me an advertising campaign and asked me to have 2 sponsors, in my show. And they were giving me something like $500 or $600 a month. I'm not going to sell, mattress, for Casper. Yeah. Just for $500 or $600, I don't want. Maybe because I don't need these $500. But yes, you're right. It's not.
And also, it compromises your your brand, because you're not talking about mattresses. Your podcast's got nothing to do with mattresses, right? So,
Totally.
So the people that reach out, and I had one reach out to me today, and I thought, well, it's got nothing to do with the podcast. Somebody offered me some sponsorship, and it was less than that. So it was pretty no-brainer for me to say no. But yeah, you're right. It's compromising both the content and the brand to do that. So tell us a little bit about Uncut FM and how this plays into this scenario.
Yeah. So basically, how to say that, our conclusion, the way we are seeing, the world and this creator economy is, as a creator, you don't have many ways, to monetize your work. We talked about advertising. This is about monetizing your audience. So if you want to make decent amount of money, you need a big audience. We know that majority of creators, not only they don't have a huge audience, but a lot of them don't want a huge audience, actually. Yeah. They don't care, that they are doing very specific niche content. And it's not like they are looking for million of viewers or million of listeners. So this model of monetization doesn't work, for them. And advertising, it's basically 99% of the money of advertising is only going to 1% of the creators. So it's a pretty unfair kind of monetization model. Then there is other form of monetization that popped up, during the recent years. One of them is subscription, which is not about monetizing your audience, but more about monetizing your content. Meaning, you're going to put some of your content behind a paywall and ask your audience to pay for a subscription, like they are doing with Netflix, for example, to get access, to this content, which sounds, pretty good, and interesting. The only problem with this monetization model is that it creates, it puts, the creator into a very dangerous content creation treadmill, where basically now you have subscribers, so you need to create more content, for them, for these subscribers. And it's kind of unfair because that means that your good content is only for the people who pay you. What about the people who cannot pay you?
Yeah.
And as a creator, if you have something to say, you want the maximum of people to know about this. And also it's very difficult. When I create something, I'm not thinking, okay, this content is going to be less interesting than this other one. I always trying to do my best. I'm not saying that I achieve, this goal all the time, but every time I'm creating a content, I'm trying to create the best content I can. So this subscription model is interesting, but it only applies to people who can pay for it and they can afford it. And also it's going to put you really into a very dangerous situation where, and we know that the majority of creators out there are very close to burnout. They don't have time, to create more content. Then there is other form of monetization like donation. The reality is that it doesn't really work. You're not making a lot, if you're asking for a donation. And also most of the creators don't want to make charity, they don't want to be like, okay, please give me something, so otherwise, I won't be able to continue. I think it creates a very confusing kind of relationship with your audience. So with Uncut.fm, what we want to do is to create a new model of monetization that is not about monetizing your audience or monetizing your content or asking for charity, but it's about monetizing your community. And I know it's not easy to understand what I mean, by monetizing your community. What we mean by monetizing your community, and we use NFTs and tokens, to do that. It's about your content is out there, is available for everybody. Okay. Maybe if you want, for example, that's what I'm doing, with Silicon Valley. I say to my community, I don't want any advertising, on my content. There will never be advertising on my content. And this content is free and available for everybody. But I know that inside my audience, there is a core group of super fans of my podcast. And I'm using NFTs and tokens and to offer them access, to something special. The first access they have is access to me. But actually, it's not only the access, they want, they will also want to have access to the others, fans. Yeah. Because if you listen, if we all together listening to the same podcast, it's because we have a shared interest. So you can use these tokens as access cards and create a community and move, your audience from your audience into a community and use these NFTs and tokens and give ownership, to your community of these tokens. And say, it's not only a beautiful JPEG, this is not about that. We are in a very new kind of NFTs that are utilities, where basically if you buy, this token, you get access to something special. Maybe you get access also to some form of utilities. And also you have a status, inside my community. Because if I bought, the first tokens, for example, what I did, by the way, from InnovaBuzz, it means that I was there, at the beginning.
At the beginning.
And then you can start, segmenting your community into very different categories and start rewarding your community members and your super fans, with great stuff and great utilities and benefits. That is very interesting and that will really strengthen your community around your show. That's what we're doing. We are allowing, creators to easily set up a page and start minting for entirely free, their tokens, and start providing benefits and utilities to their core fans.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned a lot there about community, and I think that is where the value of all these content creators building a business model is in community. And we've been setting up a platform for bringing that community together and making quite a bit of progress on that. But the missing bit was how do we get people into that community? How do we monetize that part, and how do we set it up so that we can actually afford to then provide special things inside that community, things that are more value than simply the podcast itself, which we continue to do for free. And the missing bit there, I think, is that digital token. So we can have people buy digital tokens. For example, one of the things, and I learned this from you, one of the things we're doing is having a digital token for each episode so people can bookmark each episode permanently, and with a small contribution, they're the owner of that bookmark, and that bookmark is unique regardless of what I do with the podcast. Even if the podcast goes away and I take down all the episodes, that recording is still attached to that token. So that's why
eternally and publicly. And even if you're deplatformed, tomorrow because you said something very wrong, these people who bought, these NFTs, will get access, to this content forever, and nobody can change that. And I think that's very interesting. I'm using exactly the same tactic, with my community, where I'm minting every episode as an NFT. You don't need the NFT to listen to the episode, but my community is buying, these NFTs. I think it's a way for them to show their appreciation.
Yeah.
This episode was very good. Thank you for making it. And I'm going to give you, I don't know, $20 or whatever it is, to just show my appreciation. But also, I think it's some sort of a golden bookmark, where I'm creating a collection also with all the episodes that were really life-changing, for me. And I got this collection of digital assets that I want to keep. It's a little bit like buying a book, I mean that a lot of time, people are asking me why I would buy an NFT of a podcast. And I'm like, okay, but why are you buying books? I think it's exactly the same. All the books are at the library. You can go to the library and rent the book if you want to read it. But we still want to buy books. Why? Because we want to keep them. We want to have some ownership on them. And that's very interesting. Maybe because we want to show them, I don't know if people see that, but behind me, I've got some books, and why did I put these books here? Because I wanted somewhere, show them or feel that they are next to me because they mean something to me. So there is that. And also the fact of owning something, it brings a lot of new opportunities. When you own something, and we don't own a lot of stuff, on the internet, by the way, but maybe your domain name, that's one of the things that we can own. But otherwise, if you think a little bit, we don't own a lot of stuff, on the internet. And these NFT and tokens allow us finally not only to buy, but to own digital assets on the web. And what is fascinating with ownership is that when you own something, it's like an object. You can use it. You can lend it to someone else. You can resell it if you want, make some money out of it, or you can destroy it and it will never exist anymore. This is something, if you think a little bit about everything we are consuming on the internet, there is not many things that you can do that with.
Yeah.
So here it's fascinating to be able to put some, not only a value, but also some ownership on things that we create and offer, this value and this ownership to the people, the most important people for us, our community. So now we transfer, this ownership to them.
Yeah. The other thing I like, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that, is the power for a podcast or a content creator of any kind with Uncut FM then, and selling those digital tokens to their community, of then knowing who's in that community, who. So let's say one podcast episode, for example, that I've minted, there's 100 people have bought that token. There's only 20 have bought that token. So that's telling me something, perhaps. Yep. But within that 100, for example, I know they're really interested in this kind of content, and I have the ability to communicate with them and talk to them, and they have the ability to talk to one another also on the platform, on the community platform.
Yeah, I think that these tokens, what is very interesting is beside, the technology, the ownership, the value, the media, they have some sort of a emotional charge, attached, to them. And that's very interesting in terms of marketing, because it allows you, like you're saying, there is 100 people who bought, this token from, for example, an episode that I did. It means that a lot of people like, this episode. But the fact that people bought it and wanted this episode to be theirs is also a fantastic way for you to segment these 100 people attached, to this token. I know they represent a very specific segment, inside my community. I did, for example, as an example, when the war with Ukraine started, I decided to do an episode about what's going to be my podcast, Silicon County, is about tech. We're talking about what's going on in the tech space. And I decided to do a special episode about what is going to be the impact of the war in Ukraine on the tech industry. And I minted 80 copies of this episode as NFTs. And I said to my audience, if you buy these tokens, 100% of the proceeds of these sales is going to go directly into the crypto wallet of the Ukrainian government. And I sold out, the 80 NFTs. This is a great way as a creator to do something, not only create content, but attach, to this content, real actions, that your community can take. Because I think that may be a conversation we might have. I think we are living in a very interesting moment where it's not about attention anymore. We are moving away from this attention economy that we've been in, for a very long time, into something very interesting that I call the intention economy. That is a very different definition. Attention is about viewership, listenership, and we know that, first of all, all these metrics are vanity metrics. I got 1 million followers. Oh, I got 2 million. Oh, I got 2.3. Oh my God, and they all are vanity metrics. And one thing also we've learned down the road is that most of these metrics are totally fake. Grabbing attention today is very easy. You can even buy, this attention. And we know that, and I don't know if people realize, but most of the attention, all of these metrics you see out there, it's like the reviews, on Amazon, they're fake. Most of them are fake. We know that. You can buy followers, on Twitter if you want. That's exactly why Elon Musk, decided not to buy Twitter, because most of the accounts on Twitter are bots. So I think we are reaching, the end of this era of the attention economy, and we're entering a very interesting era that I call the intention economy. The question is not about the number of followers you have or the number of people watching or listening to your content. It's about the number of people in this audience able to take action for you. And then that's very difficult, because if you haven't built a community, if you haven't built a true relationship, with the people, nobody's going to take action, for you.
Yeah.
I was talking with a podcast last week. I'm not going to say which one, but it's a very good podcast in the US. They are doing more than 100,000 listens per week. And they decided to open a Patreon, with a subscription. They only have 27 subscribers. They have a lot of attention, but they don't have any intention.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to engage, with them. Why? Because their content is great, is amazing, but they haven't built any community, and this community doesn't know that they can be part of this community, and they haven't asked, this community to take action, for them. And I think that right now that we are entering a world where we need to move, attention from intention and build very strong community. They don't have to be big, but they have to be super engaged. And I think that these NFTs, these tokens, are just a proof from people to say, I am giving you something and I'm getting something in exchange. And it means that I want to take action, with you. I want to do something for you. It means something.
Yeah. I love that. Intention economy versus the attention, and it certainly does speak to that vanity metrics versus action that people actually take as a result of the content you're producing. Well, the example you gave there of the episode around Ukraine, it brings up that point that you can actually set up the token to. And our tokens on the episode are set up to split 50-50 with the guest of the episode. And that's transparent. Yeah. So I don't have to do anything. It's kind of, if you think of affiliate programs where they're actually really hard to manage because you've got to track and sometimes you've got to individually make sure that your affiliates who are making your sales are getting their right amount. Whereas here it's just automatically set up. Or the other thing it also brings up is, and certainly with the intention economy, people feel as though there's causes that they'd love to contribute to, but I don't have any spare cash to contribute to, let's say, the war effort in Ukraine or the defense of Ukraine, if I'm passionate about that or whatever it might be. And yet here's a means where I can make a contribution to that thing that I'm passionate about simply by creating some content. And I know that my community will love that content, so they can help support this particular charity.
And you don't need to ask the permission to the Ukrainian government, because I didn't need, I basically found their crypto wallet online. It's public. I just made a little bit of research to make sure that I was not sending to a fake, wallet. I made my own research, and I found some articles, talking about and giving, the wallet address and the verified wallet address of the Ukrainian government. And a lot of people are telling me, yeah, that's great, everything you're describing, but why do you use the blockchain? Why do we need the blockchain, to do that? We can do that, without the blockchain. First of all, if I had to send money to Ukraine, it would have cost me a lot of fees. Yeah. If I had to use a bank. But the beauty of everything we are talking about here is that you can create this economy and have, this flow of money in between people in a very transparent and public way without incorporating any company, without opening any bank account, without signing any contract, without having to build any trust in between the different parties, and without having to do any accounting. Because yes, when I set up, this contract on my NFT with a smart contract, we call that a smart contract. And I said, every person who would pay, for this NFT, 100% of the sales is going to go into this, not in my wallet, but into this wallet. No money, transit, with me. The blockchain made the work, for me, and took the money directly from my community and transferred, the money into the right wallet without using any bank or without me signing any contract, with the Ukrainian government or with my community members, because there were no doubt, when they bought the NFT, they could see that the money was going into this wallet, and they could verify by themselves that this wallet wasn't my wallet, but was the official Ukrainian, wallet. So that's fascinating. And I think it's what is very interesting. And that's why we need the blockchain, because the blockchain is providing us with the financial infrastructure to create this economy without any platform or without any intermediaries. So we can decide, to make, this transaction public, transparently, seamlessly, and in just a few clicks, just by programming, the smart contract the right way.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it? It's a brilliant example, I think, of new technology, and something that certainly opens up a whole lot of possibilities that aren't there, as you said, with standard type of financial transactions. And the other thing you didn't touch on there, transferring money between countries, is always fraught with scrutiny, because unfortunately there's a lot of money laundering going on through that means as well. So
in a traditional world, if I had to do that, myself, and because I don't have a company to manage, my podcast, I would have had to ask, my community to send the money to me. And first of all, that would have created something very interesting with taxes, so basically I would have received money. So that means that I should have paid, some taxes, on this money I received. And I didn't want that, so I said, I mobilized my community. I raised money, from my community, but no money, transited, through me, and so it went directly to the right people. And you can use that system not only for charity or causes, like this, but imagine that you as a podcaster or even a video producer can say, okay, we're going to turn, this, or imagine a musician, building an album or something like that. They can create this music and then set up, as an NFT, their tracks, and say, in this track, there were these musicians, playing. And I'm going to give 10% to the bass player, 15% to the keyboard, player, because he did a little bit more, on this track, than the other guy, and X% to the audio engineer. And you can split, the revenue and create, this contract forever that is going to be public, by the way, and it's going to be like this forever, eternally. And every time, someone is going to buy this NFT, you as a fan, when you buy the NFT, you know exactly where your money is going.
Yeah.
It's totally transparent. There is no intermediary, no more labels or majors, taking a cut, on the artist, and you being milked, by these intermediaries, because we know that in music, it's very true. The artist is just getting maybe 10% or 15% of the revenue. So that's very interesting. It opens again, go back to when you asked me, what is the impact you want to do, is allow, creators to reclaim what they are creating, and the value they create, and decide, by themselves, how do they want, this value to be split in between the people who really contributed, to this creation.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, this is fascinating. I mean, we can go on talking for ages, and we've had lots of long conversations about possible applications and examples, but I'd certainly encourage people to check out the Uncut FM website and get in touch if they're interested in learning more. I think
it's entirely free. Everybody can go on Uncut.fm, create their own page, and start minting. So that's why we call FM. It's free minting. Yeah. So it's basically you can go open your page, start creating your own tokens, decide what you want to digitalize, what kind of digital assets you want to create. And one last thing that is very interesting, and we can talk for hours about that, but what I found very interesting is that if you have this freedom, now you can propose your community not only to be part of your community, to be part of your group, but also to be part of your own economy. And that's very, very interesting. So I just give you an example I did, myself, with my own podcast. I'm about to release a new season of my podcast. It will be season 4. I'm not like you. I've not been around for 8 years like you did. But I said to my community of fans, listen, I'm creating 50 tokens, only 50, okay, that I called the socios. You can go to my page, siliconcarne.uncut.fm. And I said, if you buy this token, they're not only unique images that represent you as a socio in my community, what people love, by the way, but there is a real utility embedded, in this token. 25% of my revenue for the next season with the sale of my NFTs is going to go back to the 50 holders of these tokens. So the sale of these 50 initial tokens helped me to raise money to put together the new season. But at the same time, I turned my community members into stakeholders, shareholders, where basically this investment is not one way. It's not that they gave me money for just supporting me. Now they invested in me. And 25% of the sale of my next NFTs, again, thanks to the blockchain, is going to be distributed across, these 50 holders, these 50 token holders, without me having to do anything. So when you start, thinking about that, it opens a ton of new opportunities for creators where basically they can turn their audience into a community. But more interestingly, with this community, they can create a real organization and share, the upside of what they are doing directly with their community. And if you start, proposing that to your community, I can guarantee you that they will take action and have real intention for you.
No, that's a fabulous example. And certainly creating a shareholders committee that then benefit in the revenue of those episodes going forward.
And think about that not only for podcasts. You want to write a book. You want to create an album. You want to create music. You want to, whatever project you have, now you can make your community part of this project with you and part of the economy of this project with you.
Love it. All right. Well, I think it's a good point to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round. It's a series of 5 lightning questions that I ask of every guest. And the idea is you'll inspire the audience to do something, take action with intent.
Okay.
All right. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Open a crypto wallet for sure. That's the one thing to do, right now is to, you can open a MetaMask if you want, or a Phantom. That's my favorite one, Phantom, wallets. But yes, you need to, I think that you remember back in the 90s, you had to create your own email. So I think that today in 2022, if you had to do one thing is to open your own crypto wallet so you can start, storing and tokens, trading and sharing, digital assets.
Yeah, that's great advice. And there's lots of, I know when I first started, I was confused and thoroughly overwhelmed, but there's lots of great guidance on the internet.
You will be confused. Yeah, don't worry about that. It's a rabbit hole. You need to get into this rabbit hole. It might be a little bit scary at the beginning, but everybody, is telling me, yeah, but it's confusing. It's complex. The UI UX is terrible. True. It remembers me a lot, when my parents, at the beginning, when I was talking about the internet, with my parents, and I was asking them to put their credit card number, on a website to buy something online. It was exactly the same fear.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same. So yeah, just try, educate yourself. You're going to learn a lot, through the process. And yeah, I think it's important, today to get into that, and it's free.
Excellent. All right. Now, what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Oh my God. Besides taking drugs, no, I'm kidding. No, I think that the best way to develop new ideas is to surround yourself, with people that are smarter than you. And it's not that easy because you feel stupid, of course, but surrounding yourself, with smarter people and be amazed and impressed, by the people. I'm a musician, also myself. So the best way for you to learn music is to listen to other people playing music better than you and try to do the same, try to replicate, what they are doing. And because you won't be able to do it because they are genius or they are better than you, then you're going to start developing your own style. And you're going to find your stuff not about, these people, but about yourself. So I think that's something I've been doing as a musician, forever, and try to do the same, in my professional life. I try to copy others, and because I cannot manage, to copy them because they are so good, but through the process, I learn so much about myself, and I find, something unique about me, and it becomes me. It becomes myself. And that's
I love that. Yeah, I love that approach of, using it to learn about yourself and learn about your unique style. All right. Do you have a favorite resource you use in business?
Google. Every day, because I'm copying, others. So Google is I think it's a sort of a second brain, that connect, me to so many different thinkers, and because of this creator economy, everybody's sharing, online their thoughts. I'm reading a lot of newsletters, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that the internet, and I'm someone spending a lot of time, but because I'm not a tech guy. My background is in literature, and I spend a lot of time, reading stuff, writing also myself, a lot of stuff. So yeah, my notepad and Google. Yeah. And that's my best tools.
Excellent. All right. What's the best way to keep a project on track?
The best what?
Best way to keep a project on track.
Oh. Passion, I would say, is I think it's if you don't believe in what you're doing, you have a ton of occasion to let something slip away. And I think it's you need to have a true link in with what you're doing. I'm an investor, so one of my favorite questions for entrepreneurs is why you? Why are you doing that? It's not about just what are you doing or how are you doing that or what is the market opportunity, but why is it going to be you? What is the relationship in between you and this? Because if you have a true relationship, if that's something that is ingrained, in yourself, and then you're gonna spend, you're gonna spend a ton of hours. You're gonna make everything possible to make that happen, and that's the best way, to get things on track, so you have to believe in what you're doing. If you don't believe in it, just don't do it, or let other people believe more in that, do it for you.
So tap into the passion.
Yeah.
All right. And the final question of the buzz round, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I mean, listen, we are all so different, by nature. So you don't have to do anything. You just, you just have to be yourself, and find your inner you. And because we are all unique, we all, come from, listen, everything is cultural, so we all had a different culture, a different journey. So that made us, different from each other. It took me a long time. I'm 49. I think I struggle a lot, on this typical question, because I was trying to, until, I was 40. Then I started to understand a little bit who I was. And I started to be in peace maybe with who I was also myself, and not try to, be someone else or be someone that others want you to be, and just be myself. And the moment I started to accept, who I was with everything, my flaws and my qualities and stuff like that, I felt like I became someone unique. At least, when I look at me, I feel like I'm kind of unique. And the people who know me will tell you that, it's kind of a character. But it takes some time. Yeah. You need to accept yourself, and it's not easy. So I don't have a secret, recipe.
I think there's a big message there, a secret message, which is accept yourself, accept both the flaws and the strengths. And you talked earlier about the example of music and how listening to others and trying to copy what they do, and then learning about yourself in that process. And I think that plays into this as well.
Yeah, and don't try to please everybody. I see a lot of people who are trying to please everybody in everything they are doing. You're not tequila, so you're not a pizza. You're not here to please everybody. That's okay. Some people, because we are different, so we have different taste. So we don't taste, the same. There will be people that will take a bite of you and won't like it. Don't take it personally. It's just that you have a flavor that doesn't fit, with this person. That doesn't mean that your flavor is not good.
Yep. Yeah, good.
That's very French,
Great analogy. I love it.
Goes back to food again.
Yeah, food. All right. Well, Carlos, this has been wonderful. Now, where can people find out more about you and the work you do, and get in touch?
I'm very
and say thanks.
Easy to find online. So if you go to Twitter, my handle is Carlos Diaz. So at Carlos Diaz on Twitter, and on LinkedIn, you'll find me very easily. Go make a try, if you want, at Uncut.fm, and I will be more than happy to engage a conversation also with you and learn from you. And how do you use, this platform that we put together? And I used to say, that because you're using the platform, we're not building this platform for you. We are building this platform with you. So I'm learning so much, with people like you and other people using the platform today. It's a very beginning of the Web3. Don't believe, that's also a message, for your audience. A lot of people believe that it's already over, that they are lagging behind, and that they will never catch up with. No, it's the very, very beginning. Yeah. The people ahead of you are maybe just 3 months ahead, so don't worry too much, get into this space, learn, educate yourself, and try new stuff. And join us and share, what you've been doing so far, and yes, let's engage a conversation.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful call to action there. And we'll certainly have all those links in the show notes as well. So finally, Carlos, who else should I bring on this show, and why?
Wow, that's a good question. What I can think of. There is a guy here in San Francisco that I really love. His name is Marvin Leo. He's been working. He's one of the most impressive investor that I know. He invested in more than 437 startups. Some of them are unicorns, just very impressive. And he used to invest in these startups at a very, very early stage when there is no product, no traction, no revenue, just a bunch of entrepreneurs with an idea. And he's a very interesting character. He's a digital nomad. He's never staying in one place more than 3 months. He's traveling around the world. He's always running around the planet. I'm sure he's going to be in Australia very soon. I don't know when. But if you, I can introduce you to him. He's a great guy.
Yeah,
he's not American, by the way. I think he's Canadian.
Okay.
Originally.
Excellent. Well, that would be wonderful. Yeah, it sounds like a fascinating guy to talk to. So we'll look forward to that introduction.
Yeah, and what is very interesting, and that's what I love, with most of the people I admire, there are people who are kind of schizophrenic, where basically they are very convinced, by stuff, when they talk with you, you feel like they are super passionate and very convincing about their stuff. And at the same time, they have tremendous, doubts. In the same sentence, you can feel both, the passion, but also the question they're asking themselves. If you take, a bar and there is on one hand, conviction and the other hand, the doubt, most of us are in the middle. But the most interesting people are on both edges. They're not in the middle. They're not average. They are fully convinced and at the same time doubting, all the time about everything they are saying. And they're very open about these doubts. When you find, someone like this, stick to this person, and learn from this person, because it's these person have terrible life, by the way, I think, because they have a high frequency life where basically it's only high and downs, all the time. But they are very, very interesting. Marvin is someone like this.
Fascinating. All right. Well, we'll get you to introduce us to Marvin and reach out to him.
I will.
For that
I will, definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he will love to be in your show.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights so generously today, Carlos. This has been wonderful, and all the best for the future. And I know we'll stay in touch. And as the listeners, as we're wrapping this up, just reminding the listeners that you can permanently bookmark this through a digital token that we will have available that was minted or will be minted as I'm speaking now on Uncut FM, and you can support the podcast in that way. You can tell both Carlos and I that you've enjoyed our conversation, and as I said, 50% of that will go back to Carlos directly.
Oh, really? Cool.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jürgen.
Thanks.
And thank you to all your listeners. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation.